We have to pray. Everybody has to pray. Hey y'all, today is the memorial of St. Padre Pio. Now, many of you are very familiar with Padre Pio, a recent saint and just an absolute pillar of holiness and piety, but most of all, prayer. Now, Padre Pio suffered with the wounds of Christ for 50 years. That means he had the wounds that Christ had on his hands and his feet and on his side. And they wouldn't heal, not because of a medical condition, because he had other surgeries and situations where he healed just fine, but these wounds remained open, and he endured and entered into, in a very real physical way, the suffering of the Lord. People traveled from all over the world to see him, to go to confession with him, which he would hear for hours upon hours. And I just want to share, if you're not familiar, a couple of incredible stories, incredible miracles that happened through his priestly, prayerful ministry. The first is that there was a 14-year-old boy who had suffered tremendously from typhus, and he had a disfigured back, and he went to confession. And Padre Pio laid hands on him, and upon leaving, he walked away completely upright, totally healed, inexplicably, other than the miracle itself. Also, another elderly man who had fallen off of a carriage and broken both of his legs and didn't receive proper healing or medical attention, walked with not one but 2 canes. And again, went to confession with Padre Pio. Padre Pio laid hands on him, heard his confession, gave him absolution, and he said, "Throw away the canes. You don't need the canes anymore." And so the man was obedient. He threw the canes away and was able to walk out upright just fine without the use of any canes whatsoever. Lastly, my personal favorite is that a man's mother-in-law was diagnosed, given 4 months to live from cancer. And so he went to visit Padre Pio. He went to confession, and Padre Pio, and this is my favorite story of Padre Pio. The man recalls that Padre Pio took 2 big sighs. You can just imagine Padre Pio in the confession. You see those paintings, those images of him quite a bit. He takes these 2 big sighs and says, "We have to pray. Everybody has to pray." And that might seem very simple to you. It might seem, I mean, obviously it's not a scientific or a medical explanation, right? Or a resolution to this woman's terminal cancer. But this phrase, "we have to pray, everybody has to pray," it's so true. It's so true. I think we can make a million excuses not to pray. I think we can come with 1,000 reasons why we don't have time. We're busy. We're all busy. We get it. But the words of Padre Pio are truer now more than ever. I believe very much that the lack of prayer is a direct result or a direct cause of so many of the issues that plague our society today. So many of the things that you and I are seeing happen right now that causes us to say, the world's gone mad. What's wrong with everyone? Well, are we praying? Are we praying as often as we can? Are we being prayerful during Mass, or are we distracted in our mind somewhere else? Are we focused more on our worries and anxieties and making to-do lists throughout the day and worried about our kids and our friends and our job? I mean, you would think it would be the opposite, right? You would think that if you exerted all that energy and all that time into prayer, that those things maybe wouldn't fade away and all the solutions wouldn't just arise immediately. But I will have to say, the holiest people that I know, the happiest people that I know, spend as much time in prayer as they're able. Of course, that doesn't mean neglect taking care of yourself or your children, but as a result of this man listening to Padre Pio and going to confession and hearing we must pray, everybody must pray, the mother-in-law who was given that 4-month-long diagnosis or 4 months to live, lived for 19 years. And so the key to these 3 miracles is not magic, as we faithful Catholics know, but it is in fact, if you look a little closer, confession. It's confession every single time. I know that you probably hear that from me a lot, but it's not, when other people hurt us or when other people offend us, that doesn't cause us to break our bond with God, and doesn't sever us from the divine life. We're no longer, it's not when someone hurts us that we cut off our life of grace, you know? It's our own sins. And sometimes when people hurt us, we allow those sins to turn into wounds that can fester. But most of the time, the pain in our lives, the difficulties in our lives can be pointed right back towards ourselves. And so Padre Pio is the example and gives the solution to these people. It's not me, it's the Lord. And how that relationship is repaired, how it's patched up, how you are once again participating in sacramental communion with Christ, who is the Lord, is the sacrament of reconciliation. So make the time, make the appointment, make the drive, and go to confession. As the gospel acclamation proclaimed yesterday, repent and believe in the gospel. God bless you.